I usually like to start off by getting to know people. If anyone was at my talk at DevNexus earlier this year, I introduced myself to pretty much everyone that was there, I think. Maybe I missed a few people. But I'd just like to get a feel for who's out there, what you do. I understand I'm at a Java users group. I've got that much. And I'm talking about Hibernate, so there's going to be some persistent stuff. But who here works on kind of back-end kind of stuff? Most people. Front-end people. Okay. Anyone strictly doing data work? Database, 2. All right. Very good. Very good. All righty. So I am trying to figure out how to get my computer to work. This isn't. Well, this will be interesting. Maybe. Sweet. All right, guess I'm not using that. Unless it's not on. Hey, there we go. Cool. Now I think we're good. Very good. Very good. Okay. As was mentioned, I'm Jason Porter. I work at Red Hat, although I do not work on Hibernate. So I have worked on a number of things. If anyone was familiar with Seam, I worked on Seam. That's actually how I got started at Red Hat. I've worked on JBoss Forge, Archillion. I'm actually co-authoring a book right now on Archillion, so it's a testing platform for testing inside of a container. I've worked on Apache Delta Spike. I do a fair amount in the CDI ecosystem. If you're familiar with CDI at all, kind of a competitor to the Spring injection idea, although it does a lot more than that. And I'm currently working on the developers.redhat.com site, which is, I'm doing a bunch of front end and back end kind of stuff, so playing both sides of the fence on that one. But that's what I do. I'm based out in Salt Lake City. Glad to be back out here in Atlanta. It's been a few months, but grateful to be out here again. What we're talking about tonight, obviously, is Hibernate. So we're going to be talking about Hibernate Spatial, which I know there was one of the guys there earlier. Where'd we go? From the Tex-Mex place a little bit ago. Back over there. Yeah, he was doing GIS. Anyone else doing any kind of data with GIS? No. All right. I have lots of slides about that. Some Java 8 stuff in Hibernate5, miscellaneous enhancements, and then also the path to migration. Sound good to everyone? Okay. Any questions out of the gate? If you've got questions, feel free to just raise your hand, shout them out, whatnot. I'll take them as they come. So what Hibernate Spatial? Hibernate Spatial is a project that started outside of the Hibernate community, specifically around doing spatial queries, enabling spatial storage through Hibernate, so you can access all of those kinds of things through Hibernate. So you've got the ability to do things like polygons, points, lat longs, all of that kind of stuff that you can do right in your JPL or HQL or JPQL, that kind of stuff. You have access to that. And then you also have the ability to natively store all of those kinds of data. The premier platform for a long time was PostGIS, so it's a GIS add-on to Postgres. All of the other major vendors have at least some support for GIS stuff. Oracle has a lot. SQL Server has a lot. MySQL has a few. Who else is there? Mongo has a little bit, although we don't really play to the Mongo side in JPA, but that's okay. So that you can do all of those kinds of things. One of the great things, the project started about 3 years ago, and it's now been moved up into Hibernate proper. So it'll be revisioned with the rest of the Hibernate packages and suite of things. Again, I know there weren't a lot of people that said they were doing anything with it. it's really kind of interesting stuff if you want to play around with maps or pathing or any of that kind of stuff. And get a feel for it. I've actually got a demo that uses some of it as well. We're using GeoLatte now. We were using another project previously. GeoLatte is kind of the de facto standard now for doing that kind of stuff in Java. So we're making use of that. I mentioned some of the GIS functions that you can do. And so some of these may make sense. A lot of them come with the idea of kind of what you would end up doing mathematically. So you've got disjoins of, so imagine you've got a plane or a couple of objects on a plane. You can test whether or not they're disjointed, if they intersect, if any point of them crosses or touches, or if one of them contains another one, any kind of overlaps, intersections, all of that kind of stuff. So one of the things you could imagine, one of the things that I've done, not with Hibernate, but one of the projects I worked on, again, not in Red Hat, but some freelance stuff, was for a city. So there's someone wants to do an announcement. You've got to go out and find all of the houses within like a 300 foot radius, or about 92 meters radius from your house or wherever that announcement is, and you need to go find all of those. So the typical way to do that, is to put your point down in the map. So imagine doing this in like Google Maps or something. So you put your pin down in the map, then you measure out an ellipse or a circle out 300 feet or whatnot, run that all around, and then anything within that area or anything that touches that is either within or touches the border of that circle, you'd have to send out notifications to people, that kind of stuff. Really big in cities and towns, municipality kind of thing. I know the guy that was with us was doing stuff with power poles. Is that right? Yeah, running lines, figuring out where they're at, all of that kind of stuff. So you can do a lot of that inside Hibernate now with Hibernate Special. It is an extra jar file that you add. Then it registers itself with Hibernate, and you get all these functions, and then also the ability to natively save them without having to add all the type annotations and whatnot. Questions so far? Yeah.
So that's all within HQL?
Yeah. Yeah, so all of these functions that we've got, these are all functions in HQL if you use Hibernate Spatial. Were there others? No. Okay. Alrighty, Java 8 stuff. Who's using Java 8? Anyone on Java 8? Okay, a few people. Java 7? Okay. End of life Java 6? It's good, not too many, so that's good. Although 7 has been end of life as well. But that's another can of worms, right?
You didn't go to Java 1.5.
Oh, people on 1.5. Sorry.
Trying to migrate it all into Java 8.
That's a big jump. That's a big jump. Java 8 features in Hibernate5. Unfortunately, we don't have Lambda support yet, nor do we have stream support yet, nor do we have any other really cool language features from Java 8 yet. It's in the works. Actually, maybe I should ask this question. Who's using Hibernate just standalone? People using Hibernate as their JPA provider. So you're accessing Hibernate through JPA. Few people. What's everyone else doing here then?
I didn't understand the question at first. We're just using regular Hibernate.
Just straight up Hibernate. So if you're using Hibernate with the session, so people using session, people using entity manager. Okay. All right. So most of these features you'll be able to get through JPA, as a lot of them are additions that we're doing to the spec, or there are a few things where you'll have to drop down to native Hibernate from JPA, which you can do fairly easily. But most of those things you'll see without having to drop down and tie yourself directly to Hibernate. but that's okay. So I mentioned we don't have all this stuff, and you're probably thinking, so what do you have? You said you've got something from Java 8. What is it you've got? And JPA is JPA 2.2, which will be in EE8, will include support for these kinds of things. So you'll see streams, you'll see lambdas, and all of that, and how that'll all play with JPA. That's being worked on in the spec right now, but as far as I know, no one has any direct support for it yet. The only other ones that might would be TopLink, and I haven't seen anything from them either. But look for it in the future. I can't comment as far as when it'll be in Hibernate, but it'll be there when Java EE8 comes out, in the next 2.5, 3 years. But what we do have as far as Hibernate goes is we do have JSR 3.10 support. Anyone remember what JSR 3.10 is? Anyone familiar with JOTA time?
Oh,
Yeah. Okay, JSR 3.10 is JOTA time in the JSR. So it's very similar to JOTA time. There were some improvements to JOTA time. So if you're still using some of the old JOTA time stuff, especially the 1x branch, I know 2 came out, God, when did 2 come out? A year and a half ago, something like that. So JSR 3.10 has a lot of that already baked in, some improvements to it and whatnot. So you don't have to worry about using Java util date or Java util calendar. Who's tired of using that stuff anyway? Right. So we have support, native support for things like local date times, local time, all of the duration, the epochs, all of that kind of stuff that you have in Java 8 as far as the java.time package goes. Now, how does this come out? That looks okay. Probably horrible to read, I'm guessing, especially in the back, right? That's okay. All right, so what we've got is exactly what you would expect these to be. So your Java duration ends up being a big int in the database. An instant is a timestamp. Local date time is also a timestamp. Local date, as you would expect, is a date in the database. Local time is a time. Offset date time is a timestamp. It should also include some of your time zone info in there. Offset time is a time, and then of course zone date time is a timestamp. So nothing all that surprising there, especially those that are using JOTA date time. Anyone using JOTA date time with the type annotations in Hibernate. So you've actually got your entities where you're using JOTA time? No? So how are you persisting your dates? Are you using are you? So everyone else is just going between JOTA time and Java util time, or Java util date, or Java SQL date. Is that about right? Okay. Those that are interested, it's been out for a while that you can use the type annotation from Hibernate and actually have it persist to JOTA time, similar to what's happening up here. So you don't have to worry about that conversion. I know in projects that I've done in the past, making that conversion has always been somewhat hectic. Making sure you've got the right thing and everything's converting right. It can be difficult. But fortunately, if you're using Java 8 and Java 8 and Hibernate5, you don't have to worry about that. Just use the java.time package, and everything's good to go.
As far as APIs, when are they going to support microseconds, or I guess you're called POSIX time? What is POSIX or POSIX? What's the pronunciation? I just was querying from Cassandra, and I got microseconds back, and I had to actually truncate in order to convert it to a Java date. Is that in Java 8? Or
Yes.
Is it Java 8, but not 7?
No.
That's what I thought. Okay.
No, if you
Java
want
8 is microseconds.
right, if you want anything that's going to be that precise in anything previous to Java 8, you're going to have to use JOTA time.
So JOTA time supports it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and has for a long time, 5-6 years.
And those are the only two paths that you know of?
That I know of. I don't know of anyone else that's been crazy enough to actually tackle the time stuff.
Doing a string truncation to drop off the last 3 significant bytes, does that sound unusual, or you think that's seen around the industry?
No, I think Until Joda time came out, that's what people would end up doing, right? As soon as Joda time came out, then you'd actually be able to get out to that level of precision that you needed to. And surprisingly, it's not, or at least what I've run into, it's not as standard as you would think it would be, especially to get to that level of precision, as well as trying to figure out the correct things for something that happens.
You don't need the precision, but the problem is, say you do you query the right time as on a column in Cassandra and you pull it out. You don't care about the precision, but if you convert the date, it's just going to be flat out wrong because it comes out as a long and 16 significant digits on a long.
Yep.
When it's converted, it totally blows up your epoch. It's just wrong. I mean, you have to knock off those 3 digits.
So are you clearing by these dates?
I'm not. I was writing a Cassandra query where I just wanted the right time on a column, which would be for that column. Every column has a different right time. But for that column, I wanted to know what was the time it was last touched. And you cannot convert directly to a date because regardless of what you care about the precision, that doesn't matter. If you have 16 significant digits converted and you convert it, you're going to it's just wrong.
Using date in general is really cumbersome.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's the reason why I've never used Joda time. Yeah. That's a good point for me. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Any further questions along dates and times and whatnot? I know it's been a long time coming in the Java area, getting to actually a date and time API that's actually usable. Because I think all of us really dislike the time and the calendar, specifically calendar. But it's been a long time coming, but fortunately we've got it as long as you're up to Java 8. If not, then again, take a look at Joda time. It's been out there for a while, definitely worth using. And if you are looking at Joda time, it does have conversions, so you can go between a Java util date or calendar to a Joda time and vice versa really easily. So it handles that conversion if you need to go back to the database using like a Java SQL date or whatever. Miscellaneous enhancements. So the first one that we've got here, who's running in OGI? Any OGI fans here? Nope. All right, I will cover it briefly then, especially since I don't know it very well. We do have some new improvements to OSGI. It came out of making the tests that we have in Hibernate work better using OSGI. And they were very fragile before. So we looked at doing some new things, enhancing those, and it's running on Carafe. Again, I know no one here is using OSGI, but Carafe is an OSGI container. So it's tested on Carafe, should work on all the other containers as well. But that's there. Bytecode enhancements. Anyone using Hibernate that's doing bytecode enhancements to their entities before they deploy? No. Anyone know what they are? Yeah. Okay, we got a couple of people. Or was that a question?
No.
Okay. Okay. We didn't rewrite everything, but things are a little bit more stable now in 5, and we are making better use of things like diffing. So if you want to do a dirty check, before we were actually doing a diff between objects. Now using some of the bytecode enhancements, we can do it using the bytecode enhancements, so we don't have to do a full diff. You can actually check what's going on in memory. Also, who's familiar with kind of and I don't have it up, but the bidirectional gotcha with collections. I see a couple of people raise their hands. You've been bitten by it before, right? So as it currently stands, what you need, if you've got a bidirectional, you have to add the object on both sides of the relationship, right? Otherwise, if you don't add it to both sides, then things blow up when you try to reference them later. If you end up doing the bytecode enhancement, then you don't have to do that. We'll take care of that for you under the hood. The bytecode enhancement, we have a Maven plugin, and we also have a Gradle plugin that you can use. Anyone running on Wildfly? Nope. If you were running on Wildfly, Wildfly 10 will support it natively, so you don't have to do the bytecode manipulation or enhancement before you deploy. But it's one extra step in Maven or Gradle, or we don't have an AMP plugin, but I'm sure someone will write one. But it's one extra step, gives you a little bit of extra niceties and under the hood for your entities. And that'll only continue to improve as time goes on. Performance improvements, I talked to the team earlier today. They're all over in the UK. And I asked if they had any numbers, and I don't have any numbers. What I do have, though, actually, how's this going to work out? So we need to go to displays. I want to do, nope, I want to mirror. Can I mirror, please? Here we go. That's fine. We do have, no, I didn't have it in here. It's in Firefox. We've got a project up in GitHub where they're tracking some of this stuff. And there was a small regression, but they're working on it. So if you're interested in any of the performance benchmarkings that we do internally in Red Hat, you can take a look at this. This is, if you can see it, so this is up on GitHub, our Vansa/benchmarks, and this one particularly is looking at the second level cache in Hibernate as far as performance improvements go in that one. And he didn't publish any numbers, but it's set up so that you can benchmark against Hibernate 4.2 or 4.3, and then on into Hibernate5 and the 5.1 branch as well. You can take a look at that. And I did have, so that was the regression one. I had another tab that was talking about perf, and I don't think it's here anymore. Nope. Had it, closed it, not here. One of the things that we have done in Hibernate5 as far as performance goes is we've made an effort to make, wait a minute. We've made an effort to make the memory take up the heap space to be smaller using Hibernate. There have been a few things that we've done under the hood to make that possible. And again, I don't have any numbers, unfortunately. Are we back? Cool. I don't have any numbers, but you should be seeing somewhere in the realm of 20 to 50% less memory usage with Hibernate5 as what you'd see in Hibernate 4. So that's the hope anyway. Again, those are kind of micro benchmarky things, so take it with a grain of salt. But it should be less memory intensive than previous versions of Hibernate, which will be helpful for anyone that's using large heaps or loading up lots of data in memory or whatnot. So there is that. We are working on the performance regression that we had in the latest branch. It's actually one of the things that's blocking Wildfly 10 coming out the door. But we are working on that. So as far as runtime performance goes, CPU usage spiked just a little bit. We're getting that back down. But that's there. And who doesn't like having more memory to play with in Java, right? Next, improvements to generate ID auto. So who's familiar with this one from JPA? Okay. I remember at DevNexus earlier this year, I had someone ask about UUIDs, using them as an ID for an entity. And I remember thinking, yeah, you could do it, but why would you want to? But apparently there's been enough people asking about it that we do have support for it. So we have support for it out of the box. You can use a UUID out of the box as an ID for an entity without having to play around with types or serializing it or mucking around with strings or whatever. There are also a few under the cover changes as far as table IDs and that nature in Hibernate5 that weren't there in Hibernate4. But for the most part, it probably won't be affecting many people, unless, of course, you're using a table for to grab your IDs, which I haven't found a whole lot. I know people do it, but I haven't seen a whole lot of things.
Right, so is this for, I mentioned the UUIDs in relation to this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So are you going out to the database to get a UUID, or are you just generating one in Java?
We can do both. So if the database supports a UUID, for example, Postgres does, so you can use that. We can generate IDs in Java based off of an IP address or a MAC as well, just to kind of salt things to get your unique identifier that way. And of course, you can use all the typical things that you're used to, integers, longs, any kind of number, that kind of stuff.
Java utility UUID?
Yes. Yeah. In Hibernate5 you can. You could not previously without using a type, so a type converter, but you can do that natively now. Okay. The next one that I've got, I'm going to hold off to do a demo, and we'll see how well this works. Demos are always interesting things, right? Although this is I have to say, this is the first time I've done one based off of a revision to a library. So there's really not a whole lot, but we'll go from there. Can you see it okay? I know I've got long lines, but we'll make do with what we've got. I want to do, no, not that one. So the idea here, and this is pretty simple. This is actually coming from the Hibernate spatial stuff. So we've got an event, and event has obviously an ID, a title, a date, and then also a location. And as far as the location goes, it's just a point on the map. So it's got like you can think of it on a grid. It's got an XY coordinate, essentially. A few things to point out here. You'll see right here on line 40. Where are we? Line 40. So we've got, this is using the Java 8 extra jar. So I'm using a local date. That's coming from the java.time package. And you'll also notice that I don't have a type annotation on there. So the type converter was automatically registered simply by including the jar in the deployment, and everything's good to go. And the same thing with this point. So this is a GIS point, and then everything else on the entity is exactly what you would expect. Getters, setters, nothing special. Then we've got your typical JPA annotations here. I know we don't have a whole lot of people using straight up Hibernate, and I'm not using the Hibernate XML either. Those using straight up Hibernate using XML config or, yeah, XML config? Okay, all right. I don't dabble in the XML config. I came to the game when JPA came out, so I've just been using annotations. But you can use the same thing in the XML as well as the annotations. And then we've got, as far as persistence goes, that's all there is. There's not a whole lot to it. And then I lost some tabs. Thanks, IntelliJ. Then I've got a test and just some really basic classes. I want that to go away.
What's your build tool?
Gradle, actually.
Can you show us the Gradle file?
You want to see the Gradle file? Sure. And I really want you to go away. There we go. Okay. Anyone not familiar with Gradle? A few people. those that are not familiar with Gradle, are you familiar with Maven? Okay, all right. So Gradle is similar to Maven in that it's a build tool and it handles things like dependencies for you and whatnot. It's written in Groovy, so this is a Groovy file with some syntactic sugar for actually scripting out and declaring your build. So what we've got, we've got we start off with a group and a version. Version, obviously, from what you're used to. A group would be the same thing as a group ID in Maven, and the artifact ID, if you're coming from Maven, just ends up being the name of the project. Usually, you can change that, but that's what it defaults to. So we're using the Java plugin, and we're using Java 1.8 as well. We're going to be referencing Maven Central to find all of our dependencies. And then as far as dependencies go, so we've got Hibernate Spatial, Hibernate Core, Java 8 stuff. And since I'm using the JPA annotation, so we're using the JPA API for compile time. And then I'm also making use of some of the geolatte stuff for things like points and whatnot. So adding that in as a explicit compile time dependency. It's brought in through Hibernate Spatial, although I've personally found it to be better to explicitly call out any of your compile time dependencies as opposed to relying upon them being brought in transitively. And then the tests that I'm going to be running, they're using JUnit and AssertJ, which is very similar to Hamcrest or Fest. People familiar with Hamcrest, at least from JUnit? Yeah.
Why do you say it's better to explicitly define your dependencies rather than having come in transitively?
So the question is why have I found it better to explicitly call out dependencies as opposed to relying on them coming in transitively? First off, simply so that you know exactly what you're using, and secondly, especially with Gradle, the idea of having different scopes in Gradle is beyond what's there in Maven. In Maven, you have test, compile, runtime, and provided scopes, right? In Gradle, you could have other scopes as well. And just because something is listed as a transitive dependency does not necessarily mean it's going to come in at the scope that you want it to in Gradle. So for example, the geolatte stuff is a compile time dependency for Hibernate Spatial, although when it comes in, it may be listed as a runtime dependency for my application. Does that make sense?
Well, why would it be that?
Because I'm pulling it in. So if I got rid of this line right here,
17.
yeah. So if I got rid of that line, then geolatte would come in through Hibernate Spatial, but because I'm actually depending on it to compile some of my code, it makes more sense to call that out because I'm saying I compile against it instead of just allowing Hibernate Spatial to compile against it, which may not come in at the right scope for what I need it to be for my project. Better? Is that helping any?
Does it fail?
Does it build?
Does it fail?
Yeah.
It fails.
Oh, it fails? No, it wouldn't fail. At least I don't think so. I haven't run it on the command line. I've just been using I've been using IntelliJ to build this one. It shouldn't fail because the library will be there eventually. But like I've said, I've personally found it easier just to call out the dependencies that you're using explicitly as opposed to just the implicit dependency. And then what else we got? Then a couple of runtime things, Entity Manager and the Postgres JDBC driver, of course. And any questions about the Gradle script that I've got? There's not a whole lot here. Incidentally, if you're interested in Gradle, Hibernate's built with Gradle. So if you want a really good idea on what you can do with it or how to get started with it and want to see an actual build, a robust build, Hibernate uses Gradle and uses a lot of the Gradle ecosystem. So if you're interested in it, take a look at that. That is one extra thing that you may need if you want to build Hibernate at all. You'll need Gradle. Any further questions? Yes?
What's going to happen to Gradle after the, I don't want to use the word demise, that's not fair, but the decline of Ruby? I mean, isn't it the build system that was introduced with Ruby, and Ruby's sort of fading off the scene a little bit now, isn't it? Or do you think?
Well, Ruby's not actually fading. According to their stats, they've actually had more downloads this year than they've had before. It actually lives in, if I remember right, from what they quoted, it's more downloads to this point this year than they had all last year. So,
Have they found a new corporate partner?
yeah. Yes, OCI, whatever, they had a whole bunch of people in Ruby.
Yeah.
That's great information.
Yeah, Guillaume was saying, I spoke to him at Java 1, he said that at that point in time, they'd crossed 2 consecutive months of 1 million downloads of Groovy.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's,
Thank you.
yeah, it's not on the decline by any means.
I thought that news, losing the key back in.
It's patchy and they've got OCI.
I mean, like, for example, just I think the entire Android ecosystem is built using Gradle.
Gradle, yeah. Yeah, so if you're doing Android development, you're using Gradle. Also, let's see, who else uses it? Most of the Spring project has migrated over to Gradle. There's a large contingency inside Netflix that uses Gradle. Who else? I'm drawing a blank on other places. But it's big. It's not going anywhere for a while. Yeah. Further questions? Yes. The biggest win for using Gradle over Maven? Biggest win for using Gradle over Maven? For me, one of the things that I've found, Maven is an exceptionally opinionated piece of software, right? Which is good for a lot of things until you need to go against the grain. And then it fights you tooth and nail everywhere. Be it better or worse, Gradle is not. It does have an API and kind of a DSL for doing things, but at the end of the day, your build files are in Groovy, right? So you've got a full programming language to do things that you need to do, which with Maven, not so much, right? You end up dropping into like a Ruby or a Groovy shell or something like that, or how many people have had something they needed to do in Maven and it just wasn't working for you, so you end up doing ant-exec. How many people have seen that inside their Maven files, right? Yeah. And then you've got this big, huge, long, verbose XML thing or external in an ant script or something like that you're doing something. So that for me has been probably the biggest win, using Gradle over Maven. You still get the dependency resolution, and actually the dependency resolution in Gradle I find to be superior to that of Maven. You can do a few things in Gradle that you can't easily in Maven. So like if, for example, if you've got, well, let's pick on Apache Commons, right? If you've got different versions of Apache Commons or Xerxes, for example, right, that you don't want, then you have to go through and exclude those from any of the dependencies that you're using, right? You'd have to manually exclude those. In Gradle, for example, I can say, you know what, if it's org.apache.xerxes or just anything that has Xerxes in it, just throw it out. I don't care where it's coming from, just throw it out. You can get to that level of either inclusion or exclusion in your dependencies all the way through the tree. Also, multi-projects. Anyone doing a multi-project Maven build. Few people. Painful? Or not really? It,
The big point of flexible invariance on this buttons. Because you can have multiple hierarchy levels. You don't get inheritance with the
right. Right. So you're saying better in Gradle or better in Maven?
If you want multi-level hierarchy, you have to go Maven. If you want inheritance, you go Gradle.
Okay. I've found it easier in Gradle just to do nested projects, but that could be it as well, right? You use the tool for so long, and you know where all the warts are in the landmine, so you just know what to avoid, right? Other things.
You mentioned Gradle W.
Sorry?
Gradle W. Just
Yes.
Yes, Gradle W is amazing. So that's kind of like the it would be analogous to actually having Maven bootstrap itself for someone that doesn't already have Maven installed in their system. You include the Gradle W file or gradlew.bat file, and you run that. It goes through, downloads the version of Gradle, installs it locally in the project, and uses that to go. So the bootstrap process for getting started with a new project is a lot lower than it is with Maven. Further questions? I mean, I know we're off topic, but that's okay. If you've got questions, I'll field them to the best that I can. Nope. Okay. Any other questions about what I've got up on the screen as far as this simple script? No. Okay. Hit the wrong key. Okay. So the thing that one of the things that we're testing is this event manager, which really isn't doing a whole lot. It's essentially just saving events. It was where I pulled it from and then enhanced it was actually using a CLI interface to it. So I tweaked a little bit, actually added some tests that they didn't have, and like I said, it's simply just creating and storing entities. So there's not really a whole lot there. Getting the entity manager, starting a transaction, building up the event, persisting, that kind of stuff. And then the tests, which actually are a lot more interesting, I think, because you actually get to see things. I've got a couple of tests over here that we'll run through. Nothing all that special. This is just a simple JUnit test. One of the ones, of course, it all depends on which executes first, right? But one of the ones is simply doing that idea of saving an event. So we're actually testing that entity or the event manager save, as well as making sure it's in the database. And then this other one that we've got here. So this one does a little bit more. So what we're doing here, up at the top, I'm creating a bunch of different events which have different dates and also different points, so different spots on the map. Essentially, you could think of it. And then what we're going to do is we'll actually run this JPQL filter using the Hibernate spatial things to actually test. So we'll put down, we've got all these, you can imagine, we've got all these points on the map, right? And then I want to draw a polygon, so I'm actually using a square. So draw a square on the map and tell me all the events that are within that square, right? So we're running that, and that's not all that different. So you asked about, or someone asked about whether or not you can use these straight in the HQL or JPQL. So the intersects, that's a function coming out of Hibernate Spatial. That you're not going to find that in JPQL or HQL just by itself. You're gonna run that, and then what we're expecting to find is we're expecting to find 3 events. And if I remember right, those 3 events are going to be the Atlanta Java users group, Dev Nexus, and then also No Fluff Just Stuff here at Atlanta. And then just doing some cleanup. And then just a small little utility function as far as that goes. So let's go through and run that and see if I can actually code things right, or see if things blow up. Yay! So we've got green bar. If you can make any sense out of it. This is one of those great things about running at 1024, right? You can't see hardly anything. So one of the things to take note of, at least the setup that I have. So you've got all of the Hibernate logging as well, and that was just something that I added. So you can see where's the bootstrap, Hibernate bootstrap stuff. Okay, so there's one. So here's this idea of Hibernate picking up the spatial stuff. Now you'll notice and let me pull that one up. In the where I'm getting the event, where I'm getting the entity manager. Where are we? I don't even think I'm in the right location. This should be fairly common to anyone that's done JPA outside of a container. So at persistence, create entity manager factory, pull up the persistence XML, and then there actually isn't anything special in that as well. Whoops. Okay, so you'll notice I'm not actually registering anything specific to Hibernate Spatial or Java 8 stuff in here. So we're just using Hibernate. We've got this is the Postgres dialect over here, JDBC connection stuff, logging info, and then creating the schema. So there's nothing in there or in the Java code where I'm getting the entity manager to actually register any of this stuff. It's all being taken care of through Hibernate, just basically finding the jars on a class path and running those. But I am able to make use of all of those great things from Hibernate. And if any, for anyone that's interested, nope. Awesome. Anyone know the hotkey to show up the database tab in IntelliJ? If not, I'll find it. There we go. So this is running in Postgres. So like you'd expect, I've got one table. This one is for PostGIS. So this is the table that I've got. We've got a big integer for our ID, a date. So that was that java.time local date. It's a date in the database, just like you'd expect. The location, which is a geometry. It's a PostGIS data store, and then also a title, and then of course primary keys and indexes and whatnot. So there isn't anything there that's really surprising, which is great. It's one of the things that Hibernate lets you do by auto finding all of those extension points in the jars, which is really helpful. Now you'll also notice that I am using Hibernate5, but I didn't have to do any kind of major conversion between what you're probably doing in your application, right? Did anyone see anything that looks unfamiliar to them? Good. Good. If someone raised their hands, then I'd be a little bit worried, but we're good. That's one of the nice things, and actually, getting back to the slides, that is one of the nice things about Hibernate5. It is fairly easy to go and upgrade from 4. As long as you're not doing a few little things, and we'll take a look at that. So a few things that changed in Hibernate5, the bootstrapping context. Anyone manually doing the bootstrap for Hibernate. Now I know there were a few people that were using straight up Hibernate. Anyone using the configure, so people using Hibernate standalone, using the configuration to get their session manager, building up a configuration. Yes? So you're actually going through and building it up yourself. Okay, so there are a few changes in there. There were a lot of, not a lot, but many of the methods in configuration have been deprecated, and there's a new configuration API that you want to take a look at. It's a little bit more flexible, and then also it's a little bit more, a few more steps you've got to do. There's two new, there's a metadata and then also the session factory that you've got to create yourself, but it's not too bad. There is a migration guide that you can take a look at. Nope. Oh, right. It's over here on my screen. Okay, here we go. The migration guide is, that's not going to help any. The migration guide is up on the GitHub project. It's under the 5.0 branch or master. It's in the, no, it's not a wiki. So it's just migration-guide.adoc as far as that goes. The configuration stuff, no, it doesn't talk about that one. Yeah. No, that's the old stuff, isn't it? I don't want the legacy bootstrap. I want to do this one, native bootstrapping. So we'll go down to the pulling it all together. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. So the two things that you'll need to do if you're manually bootstrapping Hibernate, you'll have to do a service registry, which will add any of your XML files to that one. Or sorry, any of the Hibernate itself configurations there, and then there's a new metadata where you add any of your metadata sources. So Hibernate XML files, JPA XML files, adding annotation classes or anything like that you'll end up doing. And then you grab the session factory builder off of the metadata, build that, and then you've got your session factory, and you can call, get session, get current session, or whatever off of that, as opposed to the configuration. If you're using JPA, I didn't notice anything different. There was a small change where some of the values inside Hibernate weren't prefixed with Hibernate dash. That's been fixed, but they should be little minor things. Especially if you're using data sources, you probably won't hit it at all anyway. But that is one of the things to be aware of if you're building up a Hibernate session yourself, is the configuration has changed a little bit. Bootstrap changes. Naming strategies. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go back to the migration guide and take a look at this. So one of the things they've done, for some of the values inside the Hibernate XML file, they've gone with short names as opposed to the full-blown names, and they're recommending people to use the short names where possible. all of that's in the docs as well. Transactions, anyone managing transactions themselves? Nope. Okay. I'm not going to worry about that then. There was a change there, but no one here is using it. Type handling, anything here that we care about? So this goes into that change to the UUID that I was talking about, and a couple other things. Has anyone created their own type converters for Hibernate? Yep. One, maybe two people. So there is a few things to be aware of that. Mostly that your packages changed. So it's the contracts are still the same, but the package has changed. So you'll need to do a small upgrade there. Enums. People using enums. Anyone using enums? A couple of people. That all works the same. They did add a couple extra niceties as far as the JPA 2.1 attribute converter, if you're using that. So take a look at that. But otherwise, it should work exactly the same. Naming strategies. This one may bite a few people. So the out-of-the-box default Hibernate now uses the JPA standard way of naming tables. So if you're going to be letting Hibernate create tables, or you're not explicitly naming your tables as either in your annotations or the XML, this will be something to take a look at. My recommendation would be to explicitly name them, or go through and use the old legacy name right down there.
What's the new strategy?
The new strategy just uses the default JPA one, which it's lowercase table name. Words are separated by underscores. Probably what you're using already, but it's something to take a look at just in case. There were a couple of changed default settings. Let's see. Things that I think people may be looking at. Who's using Oracle for their database? Quite a few people. There is one change in default values. So the batched version data, Oracle sets that to false unless you're running on Oracle 12c. Anyone on that version? Or, okay, so a couple of people. Take a look at that if you're going to be upgrading Hibernate to Hibernate5. Make sure if you're doing any batch stuff through Hibernate that it still works. Let's see, miscellaneous stuff. For those people that are bootstrapping Hibernate themselves, configuration is no longer serializable, if that was something you were doing. There were some package name changes here and there. Your IDE or Java C should find those fairly easily, right? when you go to compile your stuff and things blow up. The couple of deprecations. So the annotation configuration it was deprecated. It's now been removed. Same with the table generator, that's been removed, and the table high-low generator has been removed as well. And the Hibernate org.hibernate.id.sequence generator and all of its subclasses have been deprecated in favor of the new generation strategies that are in Hibernate5. And then also for those upgrading, there is a new, what they're calling deprecation logger, so that you can actually pipe all of your deprecations out to a separate file or a console or whatever. So you'll see those deprecations listed explicitly in your log files as well. I don't think this stuff. Anyone dropping down to JDBC from Hibernate? couple of people. So some package names got moved around or renamed as far as that one goes, and I think that is mostly it. The big things are definitely going to be the bootstrapping process if you're doing that manually. Other than that, it should be pretty easy to upgrade from 4.3 to 5.0. Now, let me see if I've got anything else. I think I'm just about. I want that one. Naming strategies, type handling. Yep, and then image credits. That's as far as I've got as far as slides go. Any questions from anyone regarding any of the Hibernate stuff, anything that we've covered? I'll do my best to answer questions that people have. Yes?
So the application you said sequence generator in the
It's the... where do we go? Where is it? The sequence generator. So if you're going to let Hibernate create the sequence itself as opposed to actually doing it in the database and referencing the database sequence, that's been deprecated. It hasn't been removed, it's just been deprecated. But that'll be something to look at, or create your own sequence class or whatever. That's a good question. I don't know. Again, I don't work on Hibernate, so I don't know all the ins and outs on why. The ones that were deprecated that have now been removed were probably things that weren't being used a lot. It's like the table generator for your IDs. Most databases have their own way of doing that kind of thing anyway, and it's possible to run into issues doing it on the software side, right? Especially if you're doing batches and asking for a large group multi-threaded from a table. You could hit things like table locks or whatnot. So just some best practice stuff anyway, moving you towards doing things where they ought to be done anyway. All right, we'll go here and then there.
So I know Postgres is coming out with a new assert statement, which is sort of an update insert. And I know I'm still on 3 dot something, but that's all handled under the covers with, I guess, an update that returns and update again and does an insert or something.
Right.
You know if that's something that I guess that's something that be handled under the covers in the dialect.
Yeah.
Is that something the dialect can just, is that maybe going to come out right away, you think, or is that like a big up the street for support? Because I would think that would maybe be a nice performance enhancement. Have one back and forth over the database.
Right.
Especially when you got a collection of items and some are updates and some are inserts.
I know we try to stay fairly consistent with the newer stuff that comes out. That being said, Hibernate supports 6, I think, major database vendors and multiple versions. When that's going to be coming out, I'm not sure. I'd go through support channels or take a look at the forums or whatnot on that one. I don't have a date for that.
Sure. I guess I don't know if you've ever worked with dialects, like trying to hack around in dialects. If that's, is that something that's easily just going to be handled within the dialect, or do you think it's something you have to go make changes to Hibernate itself?
I would hope it's taken care of. I've tried to shy away from jumping down that rabbit hole, personally, but I don't have a good answer for that one.
Here. Yeah. I'm just curious, like in context with Hibernate, is there a reason why you use IntelliJ over Eclipse or even the command line? Does IntelliJ offer you anything special that those things don't?
Over Eclipse. that is religion. Eclipse, base Eclipse, or Eclipse with plugins?
I say Eclipse with plugins.
Which plugins?
Any Hibernate plugins that.
Okay, so like the JBoss tools or whatnot.
Sure.
JBoss tools and IntelliJ, at least on the Hibernate side, are pretty feature compatible. Just as an IDE, I personally prefer IntelliJ a lot more than Eclipse. It's kind of more of a personal thing.
Okay.
So you mentioned a pretty significant change in memory. Any idea how they did that?
Yeah. At Java 1, I spoke to one of the devs, and one of the deep down classes, it was, let's see if I still have it up. I may have closed that one. Or it was in an email. One of the deep down classes of Hibernate, and there it is. So the entity entry has moved to more of a immutable object as opposed to a mutable object, and they've also slimmed down a lot of that. They've done some deep performance tuning and really nasty hacking along the lines of like bit shifts and whatnot to try and play around with stuff, so it's a smaller, lighter weight object. There ends up being a lot of those created in Hibernate, so now it's a smaller object, and they're also able to get GC'd faster. That's where a bulk of it happened. Yep. Uh-huh.
Okay, so you talked about geolocation, so I suppose that under the hood is the same, but you haven't talked about full text search. So can you say a few more words about it?
Full text search in Hibernate itself, or using Hibernate search?
Hibernate search.
So there were some things. Do I have it up? Yeah. Can we get bigger, please? So this actually came from one of the Hibernate devs, specifically working on the Hibernate search stuff. So Hibernate search had a revision. It's up to, what is it now? 4.22, I think, is where it's at now. So big changes as far as Hibernate search for full text search. They upgraded to Lucene 5 just recently, as opposed to Lucene 2. So there were some big performance improvements on that end. Also some backwards incompatibilities that you'll need to migrate to. What else? There was a bunch of... He doesn't have it on here. There were some JMS updates to Hibernate search as well, and just some tighter integration between Hibernate core itself and Hibernate search. Definitely, if you're looking at doing any kind of full text search. So who's in that realm that needs to do full text search on stuff? A few people. Those people that are doing it, are you using Lucene for full text search? Solar, which uses Lucene under the covers. Are you piping in any of your Hibernate stuff to Lucene at all? No. Okay. If you end up needing to go down that road, then Hibernate search is definitely something to look into doing. Unless you want to muck around with the full text search capability of your database, which at that point in time, you're going to be dropping down to JDBC anyway to pull stuff out or actually get any kind of readable result from that. One of the nice things about full text search with Hibernate search, it's mostly annotation driven, so you can add a couple of annotations to your objects, and then it will kick those over to Lucene, index, analyze, and you can actually do a full text search on your Hibernate entities that way. Pull them out through Hibernate or through the entity manager, find the Lucene documents off of that.
So do you need to index
You can choose. Yeah. If it makes sense to just pick a couple of fields from the entity, you can do that, or just throw the whole entity in there as well. Yep. Other questions? Yeah.
I used Hibernate about 5 years ago. It was outside the container, deploying to Tomcat, which is not a full-fledged app server. I'm actually now going to be moving into a full-fledged app server environment with JBoss.
Okay, great. Thank you.
When you talked about running Hibernate in the app server, I assume you mean CMP, Container Managed Persistence.
Yes.
I assume. Just for learning, because it's not really a Hibernate question, when I move into a CMP environment, can you name the top 5 things that are going to be immediately exciting to the average developer? Because Tomcat, the real app server guys sort of laugh at Tomcat. What are going to be the first 5 things, features provided by CMP, or maybe it has to do with configuration deployment, that are going to be like, wow, I can't believe this is so easy. I was doing all this crap on Tomcat. What are the things that would excite you as a developer?
How are you managing your data sources right now?
Don't know yet.
That'll be one thing that'll be great.
Because it's actually making a move, so I'm about to find out.
Yeah.
The management data sources are provided by CMP. Provides a much more robust management data sources.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you name a couple more that are going to be just really exciting? And this has, go ahead and promote your product.
Which version of, well, are you moving to the supported platform or Wildfly?
Not sure yet, because it's actually a job transition.
Okay. Got it.
What awaits me when I discover the joys of CMP under JBoss?
Specifically for persistence, honestly, there's not a whole lot. So your data sources are going to be one thing. So the container is going to manage all of your database connections through a data source. You won't have to worry about manually tweaking any of that kind of stuff in your Tomcat XML or whatnot. That should be done in the app server, and you'll just end up pointing to a data source reference from JNDI, and then that'll handle all of your connections. It'll handle all of your
Hibernate experience. Is it going to be much different outside the container, inside the container?
No, it'll be very similar. Are you coming from Hibernate Core to JPA?
I haven't used Hibernate recently, but I have used it in previous jobs.
Okay. Since you're moving into the container, you're going to probably be using JPA, which will be a different set of APIs.
That's a good answer, because I have used JPA with top link outside the container.
Okay. All right. So that'll be the same. You'll be using the same APIs. It'll just end up being a different implementation. So it'll be it'll end up being Hibernate as opposed to top link. And there will be a couple of little things that you'll notice will be different. But for the most part, your knowledge.
Transaction management it's wildly different in the container, isn't it? Or is it just...
The container handles most of the transactions for you by itself. Just by, well, I'm assuming you're going to be coming in through like a servlet or some sort of HTTP request, right? Yeah. So as soon as you, this is going deep, but as soon as you get into the container from an HTTP request, it starts a JTA transaction. And then when you obtain an entity manager, that entity manager has already joined that JTA transaction. So you don't have to worry about joining transactions that way. You may have to worry about transactions rolling back, which you'd have to worry about anyway, right? But the part of beginning and committing transactions is already going to be handled for you. Rolling back transactions, depending on how the application is built, may also be done for you in the fact that you've got an exception that'll bubble up, and the container will catch that and roll back the transaction. If you're going to be moving to Java EE5, you'll have things like CDI and whatnot, so you'll be able to inject things that way. You'll be able to get a handle on your entity manager using the persistence context annotation, and that'll give you an entity manager. You don't have to go through the persistence class or the entity manager factory or anything like that. You'll just get an entity manager that'll be there for that transaction or that thread. You may have hit it already in Tomcat, but you'll definitely want to make sure that you understand the pros and cons of detached entities. If you're going to be sending entities to the client side and coming back, there are definitely some gotchas there, as you can attest to.
I started doing services that had all
Yeah, it can be difficult,
yeah.
to say the least. But like I said, if you were using JPA in the past, it'll be very similar to what you're used to.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Yep. Any further questions? Yeah, back in the back.
The JVM languages, I mean, Groovy has, the Grails has gone like, they're bind to Hibernate.
Yep.
Is there any direction to like do it from Ruby and Scala?
So support for alternative JVM languages. That is a good question. You did mention Gorm on the Groovy and Grails side. The Scala stuff, I don't dabble in Scala at all. Are there any Scala people here in the audience? You can probably speak to this more than. What does Scala have for Hibernate? Does it have anything special? Yeah. You're going to find that a lot, especially with Scala. You mentioned Ruby. The whole idea of an ORM on the Ruby side kind of plays back burner to the active record idea coming from Rails. That one you're kind of in one camp or in the other camp as far as that goes. I don't know of anything specific to JRuby that has to deal with Hibernate though. Other languages. Kotlin came to mind, but I don't know of anything they've done. Ceylon doesn't have anything specific for Hibernate. Clojure doesn't have anything specific to Hibernate, although that one's interesting because you don't have annotations. I think I've hit most of the big languages. Yeah. Some of them do. Groovy has a lot. The other Ruby is kind of entrenched in the active record community. The other ones, to my knowledge, just kind of use the Java interop that it's got, and you just use Hibernate straight up. Any other questions? Going once, going twice.
You're not directly working on the Hibernate code base?
No, I don't. Who's working on it? We've got a big team on Hibernate. I think there's, what are there? 5 or 6 people in Hibernate. Do we have anyone here locally? I know we used to. I don't think we have anyone locally here. We've got some people in the UK. We've got some people in Europe. We've got one person in Austin. So the project lead is in Austin. Drawing a blank on anyone else. Yeah, I don't know everyone. So I know Steve Ebersol. He's the project lead. He's in Austin. Sane Giovanni works on it. He's in the UK. And then there's a handful of other people in Europe that I don't know. Yeah.
This is super off topic, but since you talked about Gradle, I figured I'd throw it out there. We're actually switching over to Gradle, and the other thing that we're interested in, like our main code base is Java, but one thing that seems Groovy might be really nice for is just writing unit tests and stuff. And so we've been sort of Googling around to see what's out there. I was wondering if you write unit tests in, like, I saw Spock is out there.
Spock is really popular. What are you using unit tests now? JUnit?
Yeah, a little bit. We're not actually all that good at it.
Do you want to stay in the XUnit ecosystem, or do you want to move more to a BDD style? Okay, Spock is going to be BDD style, so it's very spec driven. Given that expectation, written in English-like syntax, so it's still groovy under the covers, but your test will read a lot more like an English specification. Groovy test is based on JUnit. It looks almost exactly like JUnit. Other things.
Groovy itself seems to add a lot there. If you're just writing a Groovy test, so even for Java, it's easy to do it quickly just because of the nature of Groovy.
Yeah.
Groovy also has a lot of its features are kind of like a lot of the mocking requirements are not actually.
Oh, yes, that's true.
Although there are mocking frameworks.
Yeah, Groovy does have some mocking stuff out of the box that you can use just in Groovy itself. So if you're doing mocking currently with like Mockito or PowerMock or JMock or what are some of the other ones? EasyMock, yeah. You can get a lot of that out of the box with Groovy. One of the other nice things about Groovy, so you can access if you're following the standard Java Bean syntax, so you've got getters and setters, you can access those with dot notation, just looking like you're using the field itself, and it'll actually call the getter and setter. You can also dig deep into protected and private methods and fields in Groovy a lot easier than you can in Java. So you don't have to go through the whole reflection and setting it to public or making sure you can access it, all that kind of stuff. You can do that straight up through Groovy. What else?
Did you talk about plus credits for Groovy?
Yeah.
Oh, I can name one. Configuration can be code. That's a huge one. If you use it creatively, you can have a simple configuration file that can be anonymous functions and declare it and just read it. There's a lot you can do with that.
Yeah.
And then in Groovy, the HTML builders are just fantastic. The slurpers are just one line of code, and the collection classes are just absolutely outstanding.
Yes, that's true.
The biggest set of most powerful collection classes, including use of anonymous functions on the fly inside of the collection. Very powerful.
Yeah. If you end up doing anything with XML or HTML, like you said, the builders and the slurpers are amazing. You just point it to a file and it builds it all up, and you can access things using XPath
Slurp in an
or
XML file and then do an XPath type addressing into it with a single line of code.
You'll also get things like closures out of the box without being on Java 8. So Groovy's got closures if you need to do any little one-liner kind of things like that. Yeah, yeah. The collection stuff is by far some of the best stuff that I've seen on the JVM.
Yeah, some of those are some of the reasons I thought it'd be nicer to write the tests in Groovy than.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot easier to say square bracket, comma, 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 as opposed to new array list dot add, blah, 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 right? So just some of those nice little syntactic sugars you'll get using Groovy. And it's a lot easier to write your tests in Groovy than it is Java. So if you're going down that road, definitely look at it, and if you can, move to it. I would highly recommend doing that. Anything else from anyone? Yes?
You have said you don't do much in Hibernate, but if you would like to share some good practices and what should not we do in Hibernate when we are using Hibernate with JPA?
Best practices or things you should or should not be doing with Hibernate. So one of the things I mentioned earlier in the talk, so bidirectional mappings or collections. If you're not going to be using any of the bytecode manipulation, then do yourself a favor and set up a helper method to take care of the inverse side of that relationship. And then always use that method as opposed to talking or using the methods from the annotation, or sorry, not from the entity. Use that helper method. Other things. Let's see, things you shouldn't or should not be doing. Always make sure you're running in a transaction. I mean, that should go without saying, but you might be surprised. If you need to do any kind of testing with your entities, take a look at either straight up using dbunit or, and this is kind of a plug for my book anyway, look at Archelion. The Archelion persistence unit, or Archelion persistence extension, is built on top or using dbunit. It's a nice thing to do. dbunit lets you seed your database, and then you can also diff the schema or diff any of the data inside the tables against a known state from your tests. So dbunit, yeah. Where were they from? They were in Codehouse. I don't know where they've gone to now. Yeah, but if you need to do any of your unit tests or integration tests, then definitely take a look at using one of those two things.
What's the other one? dbunit and what?
Archelion persistence extension. How about I just pull it up for you? So Archelion.org, just like the Archelions from Men in Black. And like I said, I'm co-authoring the book from Manning. If you're interested in testing inside your container, it's MEEP on Manning right now. Take a look. We do have, if you sign up for the MEEP, we do have the Archelion persistence chapter up right now. You can take a look at. There are a few blogs, although from going around and shopping around the book and talking about it at conferences, the persistence unit is one of the biggest things that people find great. That and the Docker extension. If anyone's using Docker or need to test inside Docker containers, we have that covered as well. Yep. Archelion. Archelion plays mostly to the functional and integration tests. So you're going to build up a test and then build up what we call a micro deployment. So you're going to package up whatever you need for that test and then actually deploy it out to your container and test inside the container. So you don't have to worry about mocking things that the container gives you. You're going to be testing inside the same container you're going to be deploying to in production. Or, a clone or whatever. That similar environment.
And this has a stable release, right? Archelion?
Yeah. There are quite a few modules that'll say like beta or alpha, and they've been that way for a while, but they're stable. Any further questions from anyone? Nope. All right, Gunnar. Thanks everyone for having me, and thanks for being a great audience.